Hey everyone, welcome to Founders 365 with me, Steven Haggerty. Today I'm joined by Matt Hodges-Long, founder of TrackMyRisks, and also something we're going to be talking about is prepared.uk. How are you today, Matt?
I'm very good, Stephen. Yeah, thank you for having me on.
No, thank you for joining me at 5 o'clock on a glorious Sunday day where nobody should be leaving their gardens.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've got the lawn mowed today, so we're all good.
Yeah, you're more productive than me today. Let's face it. I'll be completely honest. So Matt, tell me all about, before we jump into what you're focusing on at the moment, but just give me an overview of what you do and what you've been doing in the past couple of years.
Yeah. So I run a company called Continuity Partner that has a software platform called TrackMyRisks and a managed service business as well. And we look after companies, helping them manage governance, risk, and compliance. So we work with companies to help them avoid the elephant traps out there, whether it be regulatory fines or business interruption, failing to meet their insurance requirements, losing contracts unnecessarily, etc. So kind of what's going on at the moment is what we do as a day job, but just at a completely different sort of biblical scale, really. So this is the sort of subject matter that we're talking about with clients all the time. It's just that normally what we talk about, people don't really think is going to come true. So this is kind of a very strange situation to be in at the moment.
Yeah, it's like a real world example of what you talked to them about, I'm guessing.
Yeah. I mean, we talk a lot about pandemics to customers, and they look at you as though you're a bit daft, or did. So then we sort of turned that into, well, what if it was a communicable disease in your office, norovirus around the office or something, and everybody got sick? Oh yeah, I can understand that might happen, but there was never really a glimmer with most clients that a global pandemic would actually happen. We'd had so many near misses with SARS and MERS and Ebola and those sorts of things. And although Ebola wasn't a near miss, but from a UK perspective, this was something that wouldn't happen to us, and now it's happened. So yeah, it's been a very weird few weeks actually. It's never.
What did you see from your position when it did start to happen, in terms of businesses had to start getting closed? People could start feeling the impact. What were people's responses that you saw?
It sort of fell into two stools. So the companies that we already worked with, we were already sort of talking to them about enacting their plans 2 weeks prior to the wider shutdown. So we were speaking to them regularly to talk through what the different scenarios might be. And it's really weird now, sort of looking back to the first client that had a COVID-19 newsworthy story, which seems like a lifetime ago, and sort of dealing with that as an exception rather than the rule. So with those ones, it was sort of very much just, well, we've got the planning in place. We didn't really think it was going to be as big as it's actually been. But it is, so let's work for it. So including people like private schools, that were thinking about, do we send the kids home or do we stay open, or what do we do? But I think in the wider business community that I work in, I think there was a lot of the panic, as it became more and more real. I think the panic set in, and people think, this is bigger than anything we'd ever expected. So and then we moved into the grief phase, really, which is businesses going, they're folding. How do we access government money? Do any of these sort of supposedly great government schemes to save business actually work, especially with smaller businesses? Do they actually deliver? So it's been a topsy-turvy time, and I've delivered lots of COVID-19 webinars with a guy called Rod Cartwright. So that seems like a lifetime ago. That was 2 weeks ago that we were busy doing those. And even now, if I look back on those, and it was talking about what might happen, and there were no such things as lockdowns at that point, but it might be ahead. And now we roll forward 2 weeks, and we are where we are. So it's been strange.
It's barely getting our head above water sometimes, I bet, if you're having all these conversations.
Yeah, it's calmed down a lot, actually, because I think people they've moved beyond the planning, they've implemented, and it's more a question of maintaining this sort of new business as usual, if you can call it that. But in the run up to what should we do? Should we shut? Should we stay open? How should we communicate with our customers? That was the really tough phase. Now it's more a question of everybody's in the same boat. So, and some people are suffering more than others, and it's working with those and just helping them. And then, as a business, we, even despite what we do, we still have customers that are in distress financially. So there's the contract renewal discussions, there's the round robin emails from procurement departments saying we're all looking for suppliers to tighten their belt. We're not immune to that kind of pressure like everybody else, despite what we do for a living.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I think every single person has been affected in some way on a business or personal level. That could just, I'm guessing from like a risk management side, it's one of those things that you could probably predict to a certain degree or assume to a certain degree, but surely there's some things that happen that no one would ever have guessed or no one would ever have had plans for.
Well, you'd have it on your risk register as sort of being high impact, extremely low probability. So it's one of those things that you never really spend a lot of time dealing with.
Yeah.
If you walk into a customer and say, let's do a simulation of a pandemic, they'd look at you like you're a lunatic, and they'd say, no, we want to do a data breach, or we want to do a fire or a flood or something like that. So prior to this, my largest sort of crisis event I'd worked through was Hurricane Sandy, which was, wide area across the whole tri-state area of New York. That was huge. Yeah. And in our community, you sort of think, well, it's never be, we'll probably never have anything bigger than that in terms of the area that was covered. Well, how wrong were we? So yeah, and talking to other people in the crisis management world, I mean, somebody asked me this on a podcast the other day, but effectively, I've dealt with a lot of incidents over the years and helping customers recover from that and broader communities, but I've never been personally involved in the incident as well. Sure. It's always been an abstract, whether it's Grenfell or Buncefield oil fire or all of these different things that we can remember. I've never yet been personally involved. This one's really strange because my daughter works in the NHS, and you see neighbours around you, and people that have succumbed to the illness and all those sorts of things. So it really is personal. It's been very hard to kind of separate professional me from personal me. If you like. That's been really hard. So
it's such a awful time for so many people. In terms of risk management, crisis management, how do you think this is going to change that industry? Because I'm super curious to know what your thoughts are on that.
I think it could be profound. I mean, I'm hoping one of the things we always bang on around about is, as a species, our inability to learn from previous events, whether it's the Deepwater Horizon oil spill, whether it's Grenfell Tower, all of these things that were eminently avoidable that still to this day we haven't learned from. We haven't changed our behavior. So I think what's going to happen now is I think people will be a lot more attuned to preparedness and resilience. I think the flip side of that, and I think this is where it could get quite scary for society, is that the next time somebody has a cough or a rash in a foreign land, there's going to be a massive potential for overreaction.
Yeah. So I think we're already seeing that as well.
Yeah, and I think we could end up with a real kind of stampede. So we've got to be really careful to keep muted and balanced. But I'm hoping the legacy from this will be, as a society, we're better prepared. We take risks a bit more seriously, but more importantly, we're ready to react quickly as soon as we get, an understanding this isn't a drill, this is real. We need to ramp our response up so quickly, and we've just been way, way too slow as a country. We look at the country level to respond. We didn't change our behavior quickly enough. Yeah,
and some people still aren't, which is just infuriating. Right. Yeah, it is one of those things. So let's talk about what you've done to help in this sort of time, because you've created something called isprepared.uk.
Yeah,
talk to me about that.
So 3 weeks ago to the day, or actually 3 weeks ago on the Monday, I got a phone call from our local community group that were getting together to say, look, as a community down here in Surrey, in an area of about 80,000 people, we need to get ready for this. There's problems coming. And as a community, we think we should get together to help our community. So they asked me along as an expert in this area to give them some advice, and I ended up getting involved in that small group that formed. So an organisation that pre-existed by a few days called Surrey Heath Prepared had already sort of established with a Google form to say we might need volunteers. So we got a steering group together, and we, over the last 3 weeks, have built an organisation that now is 2,500 volunteers.
Wow.
Has helped over 1,000 people with help requests, has a steering group, has fundraising in place, has a payment system going live for cashless payments for shopping for residents tomorrow, has a governance structure, and has an ID scheme as well. So we've built this organisation as a group. What I took responsibility for was the governance, risk and compliance bit, including systems. So we built a software platform to actually manage the recruitment of volunteers and management of volunteers and the management of requests for help and the allocation of that work.
Yeah.
So that has gone through. It's on its third iteration now. The fourth one is being built as we speak. So I diverted my tech team from normal operation to this.
Amazing.
Which has been great. They've been brilliant. And we sort of rapid prototyped. And long story short, that software platform is now rolled out with another 4 council areas. So Spelthorne, Runnymede, Marlow and Hart down in Hampshire. And we've sort of taken the view now that we're working with AWS, and we're going to not open source that, but effectively make it available to any council or community group that wants it. And we're not charging for it, but what we're asking people for is if they can contribute to our support costs and hosting costs, that would be fantastic. But we're not going out and saying, this is £2,000 a month, sign here, sign the order. We're making it available, but we're only a small company, and the cost of operation could potentially be pretty ruinous to us. So we're asking people if they can make a contribution. That would be fantastic. So that's where we are, and it's so really looking to get the message out there now and help get that deployed to whoever needs it.
Brilliant. And what sort of help requests are you seeing come up on there?
So primarily, so where the pinch points are is food shopping and pharmacy collections, prescriptions. And I think what we're seeing across different areas is that people that should be shielded at home or are vulnerable, sort of over 70s and people with underlying conditions, are being forced effectively to go out and mix in the community because they have to get their prescription, they have to get their shopping. And there's no other way in a lot of communities to get it, because you can't get a click and collect space slot with the supermarket. You can't get a home delivery quite often. So you've got cash in your account. You want to buy shopping, but you can't actually order it and pay for it. So it drives you to go to the shops and stand waiting with other people and putting yourself at risk. So we've really been sort of working on that and sort of saying to people, look, you don't have to do this. There is a team of people that can do it for you. But then that leads to logistical problems of, well, how do I actually get money from that person's bank account to the shop or to the volunteer to reimburse? Because you might go and buy your next door neighbour £5 worth of shopping as a favour. But if you're doing 12 shops a week for different people,
adds up
600, 700, 800 quid, and you don't want to be taking cash from people because they can't even go and get the cash. You don't want to be taking, and we've seen around the place people taking people's debit cards and iZettle machines through the window and all sorts of craziness going on. And as a risk person, that kind of fills me with all sorts of horror. So it's about building a structure that's sustainable and hopefully isn't an attractor to fraud. And when we look back after this, after the event, it's not, there might be bending of the rules like GDPR and, finance rules, etc., but there isn't wholesale breaking of them and ignoring good practice. So a lot of it has been trying to sort of build a mature, scalable organization that isn't going to burn itself out within a fortnight.
Yeah, exactly.
Where there's a very high risk of doing that. So
how are you guys currently reaching those people that are most at need? I'm thinking where you've got sort of an elderly person living on their own, doesn't have Facebook, not really connected to social media. How are you reaching that? Or if you can, how would you reach that person?
Well, it varies from area to area. So what we did in Surrey Heath, right at the very start, is we did a door drop to all 40 or so thousand households in the area with a central telephone number and a central website address. And quite often there were local addresses put on, local telephone numbers put on that as well, locally. And then that, on top of that, there's been local radio, there's been advertising and signs up on barriers and bollards and all that sort of stuff around the constituency or around the area. Social media, referrals, lots of different ways, really. Every way we can get to get the word out. So it's driving about 100 calls a day into the call centre at the moment on a standard day. Other areas around that we've worked with, some of them haven't been particularly quick out of the traps. They were 2 weeks behind. So they kind of missed the opportunity for door drops because of having lots of people walking around. Going door to door isn't the best thing at the moment. And some council areas have a tendency to want to control from the top. And so they'll sort of say, we'll drive all the calls into a county level call centre. And then you end up with wait times of 10 to 15 minutes to 2 hours. And real delay of data getting down to the coalface for servicing. So there's some pretty poor practice going on out there, which is pretty sad to see. And I tend to jump into that and say things I should say, but I'm overly forceful.
Yeah.
So I usually trot out my history will not judge you kindly for that decision kind of line.
That's a great line.
Junior people.
Yeah.
And I think they know exactly what I mean, because there will be inquiries after this.
Yeah.
And certain senior executives that should know better will have to stand on the mat and explain why they let people in their areas, especially chief executive councils, why they let them down at this time of crisis.
Yeah.
So my view as a professional in this is I'll explain what I think, and I'll show you where I think you're going to hit bottlenecks and how that's potentially going to kill people or certainly massively disadvantage them. And if you choose not to take my advice, that's up to you, but I'm going to make it formally to you as a professional.
Yeah.
So I've had a number of very heated conversations with people, or not heated, but pointed. And some have taken the advice. That's great. Some of them have just effectively emailed to say, thank you for your musings, but we have no problems here. Everything is fine.
Crazy. That is just absolute nonsense, isn't it?
Yeah.
That must be so frustrating for you as well, because you have, and you and you and your partners, you have this amazing platform that is enabling change and help, and you're still coming up, and to this day, 2-3 weeks in, to hear that you're still coming up against people saying, oh no, we're good. It's basically going, no, we're good, thanks. Cheers, Matt.
Yeah. We'll and I see councils that are managing, thousands of vulnerable, because you sort of split down. So everybody's vulnerable that's self-isolating, but you have the known vulnerable people within a council.
Yeah.
Then you have shielded by NHS. And even the vulnerable people that have been known for years are being managed on spreadsheets.
There's just a name or a number.
Yeah, and there's keying errors, and there's all sorts of data. I mean, we've received emails, this person needs help. No house number, no name, no key information. 4 hours after the call came in, then you've got people having to rekey that information. We're just saying, look, stick it in your call center, stick it straight into our Is Prepared platform, and then the local person, the local volunteer that's in a small town split into a zone, that person gets that requirement instantly that you hit send and could close that job out within minutes, not 2 days later. It's massively frustrating. And
it just shows you how much of a gap there are within systems in terms of council systems and government systems that is probably has the right intention, but it's just being used in the completely wrong way in this situation. And obviously this situation is so bespoke.
Yeah, they're rabbits in headlights quite often. And I think they've got such a big issue to deal with.
Yeah.
And I think what they need to do is they need to say, look, deal with the bit that only the local council can do, and then engage the community to look up. Neighbours need to look after neighbours, so give them some help to organise, and they will do it. Everybody will do it.
Yeah, people are willing.
Organisation, and quite often what will happen with councils is everybody looks up. So the district council or the borough council looks up to the county. The county looks up to national, and the leadership from the national government is so poor from a crisis management perspective. In terms of no social distancing up until the very last minute, not moving to a virtual parliament, saying they were going to send a letter a week too late to everybody to stay at home, which thankfully I think has been canned. I kicked off about that properly. I thought spending £6 million on sending a letter to people about something that they should have known about last week was a complete waste of money.
Yeah.
I could critique it all along the way, but it's not helpful at the moment to have a real go at the national government and local governments. We'll do that afterwards when we do the wash up. But what it does show me is that quite often people that might be okay as managers in sort of peacetime are usually really shit when it comes to wartime.
Yeah.
And I think failure to understand your weakness as a leader in that situation is the ultimate failure of leadership. Good leaders stand aside and say, there's somebody in my town planning department that has emerged as a superstar. That person is a town planner, but actually they're amazing in a crisis. So I'm going to put that person up, and I'm going to empower them to do their job properly, rather than saying, I'm Johnny Big Bollocks, the CEO. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to lead, but not lead. I'm just going to hinder.
Yeah, ego-led.
Yeah, absolutely. And that to me is absolutely unforgivable. I'm the first to admit I'm the worst possible manager in peacetime, but I know what I'm doing in wartime.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes that's pretty brutal, the way you need to manage change through.
Yeah.
I'm terrible when I'm having to do things sequentially and win hearts and minds and bring it across. And luckily I've got other people in my organization that take care of that stuff and keep a lid on me. But when it's this sort of situation, I'll do it and I'll say what I think.
Which is what's needed.
Yeah, each to their own.
Mm.
And, I wouldn't go and step forward to be the chief exec of a local council because I'd be terrible at it, politics and all that sort of stuff. But don't try and tell me, Mr. or Mrs. Chief Executive, that you know what you're doing when it comes to managing a crisis.
Yeah.
Because you quite obviously don't. So let the professionals in. And I think, to me, one of the big failings in all of this is that regardless of what the scenario is, these organizations should have planned prior to this event.
Mm.
And they haven't. They've been asleep at the wheel.
Yeah, because there were warning signs, and warning signs that we probably never even knew about that they did.
Yeah, we've only got to look at Grenfell and how Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea behaved in the lead up to that and during that crisis and after.
Mm.
And look at the inquiries now. Any other council area could have looked at that and said, well, we might have another Grenfell, but also something else might happen, and we wouldn't want to look like those guys.
Yeah.
So why don't we have a meeting and actually talk about how we're going to manage a crisis event?
It just sounds like that, from what you're saying, it just sounds like there's an incredible amount of fear of people stepping up and speaking their mind and leading the way that they should be, they feel that they should be led, which is a real shame. And that's not in government, but just in general, any business leader or any personal leader shouldn't feel that fear to not be able to lead, because even those people that may not be great in a crisis, they can still become great in a crisis if they wanted to, and if they learn to, say they came on a crisis management with you, for example, followed you and said, look, Matt, I want to become the best crisis management leader in this company. How do I do that? But people don't seem to be doing that, or it's too late for them now at this point anyway, because it's just, like you said, people are in headlights, people are just in the zone so much now. But hopefully after this, new training is going to come out, and new education for leaders that is going to change.
I'm hoping so. I mean, I think there's one of the things we've always talked about to clients in the past, when we sort of said, look, when you get a problem, call us early. It's sort of that difference between somebody falling over with a heart attack in the office and the first aider comes across and does that sort of immediate first aid, preservation of life bit. But you're relieved when the paramedics turn up and they've got the proper drugs and the proper equipment, and then they're going to take you to a proper intensive care unit with the proper equipment, etc. It's that chain of command that needs to be put in place. But when you've just got enthusiastic, sort of semi-trained first aiders still thinking that they're now the A&E consultant because of their title, that's the problem. And it's about getting the right people at the right time.
Yeah.
The other thing that I found is that, is that you've got to be thinking ahead. So everybody at the moment, they're on the sort of scrabbling to try and keep up with today, and they're behind. Mm-hmm. They can't clear the backlog. And really what you need to be doing is sort of thinking strategically, how's UK going to look, or how's my council area going to look in 3 or 4 weeks' time from now? What's the long tail of this event going to be, and how are we going to start building structures that are going to work for the next 6, 9, 12 months? You can't do that when you're running around trying to, unjam the call center because there's too many calls coming in because you built a structure that doesn't work. So that's why they need to take the medicine, and they need to listen, and they need to engage professionals.
Yeah.
Lots of people out there that know what they're doing. Most of them are not getting calls from councils, from government to say, can you come and help us? Can you advise? Everybody's become insular. And most of these people aren't too busy at the moment because they might have been furloughed by their company, but they're available to help.
Yeah.
But people aren't asking for help generally. And there seems to be this standoff, really. I just want to get the word out there that people need to ask, and they need, people are there to help, and they just need to lift the phone or send an email.
So on that note, what can people do to become more involved with what you're doing with isprepared.uk, whether that's getting it into councils or getting it on their systems? What do they need to do to help you?
I think at the moment, just reach out to us. If you're involved in a community group or an area that are maybe running groups on Facebook or spreadsheets, and it's a little bit chaotic, it's not too late we can import all of that data. We can roll a platform out within a couple of hours, brand it all up, logo it up, and you can promote the absolute heck out of it on local radio and Facebook groups and all that sort of stuff. We can help with the organizational piece in terms of how do you organize. Today is my first day in 3 weeks that I haven't had a 5 o'clock steering group call with Heath Prepared. So we've now moved down to 3 days a week rather than 7, because we're up and running, which frees up time. So we'll help and do everything we can to make it happen. And then, just reach out, really. And if you want to forward the link on to any local councillors, MPs, whoever you want, if you're feeling they're not listening, send it on. They can call us anytime or send us an email, and we'll get them up and running and start getting the logjam unwound and start getting help delivered.
That's the thing. You have a solution that drastically reduces help time. That every single council, whether they think they need it or not, should be taking this offer of help. Because whether they need it this week, they might need it next week, like you said. So
it will get worse. And I think a lot of people are saying at the moment they haven't got very many requirements, and that's because it's so damn difficult to get a request for help, and it seems like such a bother. But if you actually make it easy for people, then people start saying, well, I'm 80 and I'd really not rather go to the shop to get some milk. And a neighbour says, I can do that for you. You just got to put them together quickly in a frictionless way. And there are lots of people at the moment with too much time on their hands that are more than happy to get out and about and do some shopping for people and pick up a pharmacy prescription and do that in a secure way, in an organised, legitimate way.
And it is often those, that 80-year-old elderly person that doesn't want to ask for help. They don't want to be a burden, but now you have a solution where it's not even being a burden. It's just being a good human, basically. So look, I'm more than willing to help you. I'm more than willing to get your shopping, get your prescription. Because I think one thing that I've seen, which has been fantastic throughout all this, is the fact that communities are starting to come together more and people are starting to help each other more, which, I really, really hope that after all of this passes, that little bit carries on. It obviously won't carry on to the extent, but I really hope that the belief changes of actually, communities are something that should be brought back into life. As it was, a year ago, you would read papers and it would say that the community is dying and people aren't wanting it anymore. But actually, I think this shows that actually community is probably one of the best things that people should be focusing on.
Yeah, and I think we've seen people, new friendships forming, albeit from a distance.
Yeah.
And I think without being too pessimistic, the long tail of community problems is going to be, measured in quarters or years, maybe, as a result of this, based on the amount of people that have lost their jobs and the potential tax rises we're going to have, and actually recovering from this there will be casualties along the way. And I think communities will need each other to get through this. So if we look at something like Grenfell, nearly 3 years on, 3 years on, that community is still supporting the community as a result of that incident, 3 years after the event. So let's build a structure, make it efficient, and then we can run that. And hopefully in the future, we won't need it. We'll mothball it. And then if we need it again in the future, it's very quick to take it off mothball and ramp it back up again.
Yeah.
We haven't got to build it all from scratch.
No, exactly. Matt, listen, I've thoroughly enjoyed this. One final question for you is, if what 3 things could you give to someone if they're in that, rabbit in headlights sort of mode, to get them out of that and allow them to start seeing 2-3 weeks ahead?
I think one is, you're not alone. Everybody is experiencing this. So, reach out to your friends, colleagues, suppliers, customers. So, from a business perspective, everybody's dealing with the same issues. Ask for expert advice. Go out and ask for it. Does anybody know how to solve this problem?
Yeah.
And then I think the third one is, try and keep calm and if you can, sort of separate your personal feelings from it, if at all possible. Try and sort of segment the day to get through it and realize that there is an end to this. It probably won't be as disastrous for everybody as we might think it is, and try and keep some perspective.
Yeah.
And read widely and use the time productively.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for that, Matt. Listen, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, like I said, get involved with isprepared.uk. What's the best way for them to do that?
Okay, so isprepared.uk is the web address for that. You can reach me at Matt, M-A-T-T, at TrackMyRisks.com, which is the day job, or via LinkedIn. Just find me. I don't think anyone else has got my name, so it's Hodges-Long, Hodges-Long, and connect with me on there. But you'll find me, and put up the flare, and we'll be there for you.
Fantastic, Matt. Thank you for creating this. Thank you for doing everything that you're doing, as well as pass that thanks on to the Is Prepared team as well, because people like you is such a great thing to happen nowadays. Thanks for being on Founders 365, and thanks everyone for listening and watching. This has been Founders 365 with me, Steven Haggerty.